Morning, everyone. My name is Andres Kofi Akoto-Addo. I'm humbled to be a moderator, your MC for today. I'm speaking from Ghana. It's morning here in Ghana. I know a lot of people are connecting all over the continent, and we are so happy to have you here with us. So this is the third edition of the African Entrepreneurship Forum. There's a quarterly forum that we do. There's a platform actually created by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. So if you are here, believe in me, you're going to have an exciting time. And definitely it's a platform full of learning. We are gathering some of the very renowned, very outspoken, pragmatic, insightful people, really from the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So we are happy to have you here with us. The objective of this forum is basically to provide a continent-wide platform that connects entrepreneurs to funders, as well as to each other for the purpose of networking, insight sharing, as I highlighted earlier, and access to opportunities, to bridge the knowledge gap, moving from the stage of a startup and becoming a sustainable business. All objectives currently in the face of COVID-19, our objective now is to create sustainable businesses that can stand the test of time. All right. So without much ado, I want to invite Vio to share with us who created this platform, the brains behind it. It's the Shared Value Africa initiative, and they're doing a lot. And so I'm very happy to get Vio to share more as we dive into today's occasion. So Vio, over to you.
Good morning, Andrews. Thank you so much for that introduction. And it's always nice to hear, how someone else will talk about the forum. And what I'd like to pick up is that, that it was created for entrepreneurs, right? And I think that's a very important part for us. But my name is Vio Lutege, coming in from Johannesburg, South Africa, and I'm a director and head of stakeholder relations at the Shared Value Africa Initiative. And really, the Shared Value Africa Initiative, was established as, to build this Africa strong network of organizations that implement shared value. And importantly, that speaks to how an organization aligns its profit-making strategy with creating social and environmental impact. A lot of content underlies what that actually means in practice, but really the work that we do demonstrates it working through our members and strategic partners across the continent. What's important to that then is the importance of including women, right? So gender equality is a very important part of creating shared value, but also being in Africa with the number of entrepreneurs and SMMEs that are across the continent. We knew from the very early stages that entrepreneurs are crucial when you're talking about impact on the economy, on economic growth, and how entrepreneurs can participate in a sustainable way. So as we continue to do our advocacy work, we then decided to establish various programs that speak to entrepreneurs. And one of those is this quarterly meeting that is the African Entrepreneurship Forum that really is for us to provide a space for peer-to-peer learning for entrepreneurs like yourselves to be able to learn, hear from others. We also find that it's a very motivating space for entrepreneurs when they're able to share and hear from other entrepreneurs who have been in the same space as them. And we continue to then find various topics that are very crucial to African entrepreneurs as we host each session. And that is why we're hosting today's session, which is themed around the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. But before we get started with the program today, I would like to just do a quick announcement. If Mr. Bright Simons, if you are here, we'd just love to, if you could just raise your hand so we know that you're here and ready before I introduce you officially. But as we get to that, I would like to make two announcements very happily on behalf of the Shared Value Africa Initiative. The first is that we are hosting our second Investor Readiness Workshop as the SVAI, co-hosted with 3 Arrows Impact Partner, and this time around also with Ghana Tech Lab. And this is, if you were here with us the last time, for us an opportunity to learn entrepreneurs how to start approaching your investor journey, your investor readiness journey. So we invite you all entrepreneurs who are with us here today, register on the link. We're going to share the link as well in the chat throughout the program today. It is in order to book your spot as early as possible. You need to register, and then we will then send you confirmation if you got in. It very much is an early bird situation that we are talking about here today. And I think that you'll find that a very informative workshop, and also to meet other entrepreneurs who are in the same space as yourself. In November this year, on the 8th and 9th of November, we as the Shared Value Africa Initiative, alongside Shift, our implementing partner, we also will be hosting the 5th annual Africa Shared Value Leadership Summit. And this time around, very excitedly, this time around, we're inviting entrepreneurs to look at how you can be part of the program as well. I would just like to invite everyone to make sure that your microphones are on mute as we carry on. So as we are launching the Africa Shared Value Leadership Summit, I'm so sorry, can you hear me, Andrews?
I hear you.
Please can everyone make sure that the microphones are on mute? Please. Are we able to mute?
I think you are.
Can you hear me now, everyone?
We can hear you, but then I think
Admin, if you're able to sort of mute everyone, perhaps on your
Sorry, Vuyo. There we go. I think it was an issue with internet.
All right, okay. Thank you so much. So again, going back to sharing the slides. So we will be hosting the Africa Shared Value Leadership Summit. But very excitedly this year, we bring in opportunity for entrepreneurs who specifically those who are working in the fight against climate change. We want to be able to give entrepreneurs 5 to 6 minutes at this summit that is being broadcast across Africa and really the rest of the world to talk about what is your solution that you'd like to share with the world with regards to climate change. We're looking for innovation. We're looking to also showcase talent that is happening in Africa. We will also share the link with more information on the chat, as well as go to our website, africasharedvaluesummit.leadershipsummit.com, that we really welcome all interactions, all ideas to come. And then from there, we will select a handful who can then come and be profiled on that space. So really, it's a very exciting opportunity to, talk a little bit about and expose and explore what else is happening on the continent, because for us, it's another way that we can support entrepreneurs and give voices to African entrepreneurs. So without much further ado, because I know that we are out of time, I'm very excited to bring to the virtual stage, Mr. Bright Simons, who is the president of Pedigree. He's gonna be our keynote today, but really he wears many hats, but what I wanted to highlight here is that he is heading up Pedigree, which is a social enterprise working on 3 continents to spread innovative technologies that secure communities from the harmful effects of counterfeiting in health, agriculture, cosmetics, and automotive sectors. For us, we couldn't think of a better person that we could bring into today's session to get us started in setting the tone and really giving his perspective on the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and as an entrepreneur as well, about what this could mean for all entrepreneurs across the continent as you continue to work and grow your organizations as you do. So without much further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mr. Simons, if you would mind putting your video on, and then address us for the keynote. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vuyo. Now I'm going to have to work this system to see how I get the video working, because it doesn't seem I have all the rights. Okay.
Would you like us to?
But I have
yes, we can see you.
I have the wrong virtual background, but that is fine. Maybe give me a second.
That's not a problem. And we also let us know if you'd like us to share your slides with you. We have them as a backup on our side, or if you're comfortable sharing them yourself.
Yes, I'll be sharing them myself. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
You did point out that I wear a few hats. So there was a bit of a transition over there. I will be proceeding to share my screen with your permission, Madam Chair.
Absolutely.
Mr. Simmons, if you can just put your presentation in full presentation.
Yes, I'm trying to do that now, but give me a second.
Not a problem.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you.
So once again, I would like to thank Vuyo and the rest of the organizers for being so gracious as to invite me to share some thoughts about how, as an African entrepreneur that does business in a number of different African countries, AfCFTA, what kind of opportunity does it present? What kind of opportunity for rethinking in particular and mindset shift can it offer? I'd like to start by saying that before AfCFTA was signed in 2018, and of course, long before we had 38 ratifications and all of this work on rules of origin, etc. in 2013, I wrote a piece for the Harvard Business Review where I was very enthusiastically and fulsomely praising this trend that I thought was going to be very transformative, this idea of the nano multinational. And obviously, like most people, I've been very keen on this concept of SMEs being enablers of value chains that transforms the economy overall in time. So if you look at Germany, you look at South Korea, there's no doubt that SMEs' ability to plug into the value chain for export was critical to competitiveness of both those economies. So in the case of Germany, family-owned businesses produce most of the actual cutting-edge innovation that bigger companies incorporate into their products for export. So a lot of the time we think of the BMWs and the Mercedes-Benz and the rest of it, but if you look carefully at the value chains in Bavaria, in northern Germany, and elsewhere, it becomes very clear that SMEs and startups are fundamental to the export competitiveness of Germany. And to the extent that the United Kingdom, France, and others, having seen the same degree of SME incorporation, their export performance have not been as wowing, not as awesome as we see in Germany. South Korea is another very powerful example of how SMEs, particularly family-owned businesses, not always startups. Some of these have been going on for many, many, many years, but they stay small, they stay focused, they stay specialized, they produce extraordinarily cutting-edge inputs. This goes into products of bigger companies, and that enhances the export competitiveness because the SMEs are able to continue to maintain cost competitiveness, which multinationals generally struggle with. We know that in some parts of the world, SMEs produce the most jobs. That has also been one of the fascinating outcomes of the literature in the last couple of decades, that SMEs have this incredible ability as they grow to add more jobs in a way that bigger companies often do not because of the tendency to move to automation as they grow bigger. So these are all critical elements of the SME narrative. And I don't have to, this being an audience of entrepreneurs, I really don't have to preach to the choir. What I was saying though in 2013 was that forget about value chains, integrated value chains, and the role of SMEs in providing cutting-edge inputs, providing highly specialized services, helping with cost control. Forget about all of that for a moment and contemplate the possibility of a near-term future in which SMEs, beyond the role that they can play in value chains, global value chains, regional value chains, start to become themselves the producers of a new type of global footprint. And I was talking about the growth of network technologies, enabling much more remote work, cultural tolerance, which is meant that branding nowadays is less focused on geographical origin. So the days where just adding Swiss to anything you produced, and that will transform your market prospects, is changing. Nowadays, it doesn't matter if you're not Swiss. It doesn't even matter if you're not American as a technology producer. You're able to build a brand by deploying technologies in social media, the social media arena, by being able to shape a narrative that connect with millennials, etc. All those factors, in my view then, was going to create a situation where SMEs are not just going to plug into global value chains and ride the coattails of the big companies, but they are going to themselves imprint themselves in different markets around the world. And they're going to explore all these opportunities. I will say that almost a decade on, so it's now 8 years since I wrote that piece, I've moderated some of my enthusiasm. I'm not as wide-eyed as I was then. But the truth remains that the prospect is possible. It is possible to stay in Zambia, build a brand, use remote working technologies, connect with freelancers elsewhere to provide support in branding, in technology development elsewhere, and establish a fairly well-functioning operation in Nigeria, way more so than it was a decade or 2 decades ago. So those prospects remain. We haven't seen the same degree of cost competitiveness in the startup terrain. I think that the startup segment within the overall SME landscape is somewhat different, because we've arrived at a point where, for a lot of traditional startup, conventional startups, the Silicon Valley model has become predominant, and that requires raising large amounts of money to place fairly risky bets and grow very quickly. And we've seen a lot of the multinationalization activity in the region being driven primarily by this type of startup. But my thinking is that they are not the only type of SME available, I think, or the SME paradigm available. I think SMEs that are not necessarily Silicon Valley-ish, they are not raising large amounts of capital to take risky bets and grow quickly, but are more steady over time, also exist. And some of them are exploring these possibilities and prospects in spreading their wings across the continent. I acknowledge, as I've already said, I concede that the pace at which they could multinationalize around the continent has not been as wild as I thought it could be. And we can discuss some of that. This is not the place for that kind of conversation. But I wanted to give you the context of my further thought. And that context was this idea that a nano multinational, it's a potential transformative idea around companies that are small, use a lot of remote technology, use trust-based networks. So I remember when I was first setting up companies in different parts of Africa, I will, reach out to people that I had a relationship with in various trust-based networks. So the Tutu Fellowship, the World Economic Forum and others. And we will, set up some kind of entity where they will provide informal advice and the rest of it. And my path will be smoothened into that country, and I'll be ushered in based on these networks that are generated, which were regional networks or global networks in some instances. I did not rely on big four consultants. I rarely relied on expensive market facilitators. I could rely on these trust-based networks because of the fact that these types of networks are emerging quite rapidly. And eventually, we ended up being able to set up more than 12 operations across the continent in different countries, from Ghana, Nigeria, Malawi, Zambia, and the rest of it. And maybe this is the time that I can tell you a little bit about what we do, because I'm sure you're asking, what is the product in the first place? You're talking about how you expanded across the region as a nano multinational, but it'd be helpful if we understood a bit of your product. So our product base is pretty straightforward. We think we are in the trust engineering space, by which we mean we provide technologies that make the supply chain reliable, dependable, transparent, secure. And some of that is in anti-counterfeiting, but that's a very narrow definition of what we do. So in addition to providing the likes of Hoffman La Roche, the likes of Novartis, the likes of Sanofi Aventis, these are some of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. I think 5 of the top 10 pharmaceutical companies in the world are our clients. In addition to providing them with tools for brand protection, we do more than brand protection. In some of the countries like Nigeria, we have a governmental relationship in which we are part of the regulatory landscape. Our technologies power the ability of the government to maintain sanity in the market. So what does that mean in principle? It means that when you want to produce something, let's say you want to make medicine or cosmetics or agro inputs, you make assurances that the products that you are producing are of the right quality. Now, a government regulator is responsible for validating those claims. In practice, it often involves auditing, inspections, and things like that. The challenge that is arisen is that that information that is in the regulator's hands does not always percolate or disseminate throughout the rest of the value chain or the supply chain. So distributors don't always know who they're dealing with, wholesalers don't always know who they're dealing with. And of course, consumers at the tail end of the chain are then shortchanged. So how do we create an integrated mechanism for end-to-end traceability throughout that whole supply chain? So I always tell people that 99% of the work we do, like an iceberg, is invisible. It's all the work that we do to integrate our systems into the manufacturing operations of the big companies. And then if we do our work well, by the time the product gets to the consumer at the tail end, be able to use a phone with a simple either QR code, scan a QR code, or text a human readable code to some kind of short code, and they get validation that the product works. All the work that we did upstream, interconnecting with manufacturing plants in Morocco, in South Africa, etc., all of that remains invisible. We also, obviously, because we are connecting the brand to the consumer, helps the brand owner with a lot of analytics. In fact, if you went to Ghana, you wouldn't notice that some of the major promotions that are run by some of the bigger brands use our tools for anti-fraud because it's not visible to the consumer. But all of that work is what we call trust engineering. And as I said, we've been, running around the continent for more than a decade now, starting as an NGO, then evolving into a for-profit social enterprise, working with organizations such as the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, which encompasses 21 countries in those 3 regions of Africa. We provide the agro input traceability system. So if you're moving maize from Uganda to Tanzania, Tanzania to Kenya, very often unknown to you, our technology is in the background, providing the analytics for anti-fraud and phytosanitary control. In the case of Kenya, if you walked into a shop buying agro inputs, very often the technology that you are using to validate the seeds that you are buying, that they are the right quality, is our technology. So we do all of those things, and we enable, as you can see on the map, with these selected examples of the work we do, we enable movement of products, we enable movement of commodities across borders. And because national sovereignty often means that a regulator's jurisdiction ends where another one begins, Commersa needed us to integrate these technologies that will enable producers in one market to provide assurance in another market that the grain or the millet or whatever they grew was properly inspected in that market from which it originates in the new market. So in simple terms, our technologies enables trust across the supply chain, both in country and across the border. And this is why I guess the after dynamics coming, and I'll go to that in a second. But at some point we thought, deep tech was becoming big. So we moved a little bit into deep tech. We spun off a company. That company built a solution that relies on the use of polymers that transforms based on environmental indicia. So let's say temperature. So the polymer will change shape and color as the temperature changes. And then we took lots of pictures of these images, tens of thousands of them, built a machine learning algorithm that extracted a model for using that to predict whether or not a particular commodity, and usually a biotech or biomedical commodity, has passed through the right temperature. And we hope that we will extend that to other environmental indicia. So in simple terms, if you take a vaccine, for instance, a vaccine has to be stored within 2 degrees and 8 degrees. Now, when you get that vaccine, you have no way of knowing as a healthcare professional if that was what really happened. So these tagans that we put on the outer packaging tracks the environmental indicia like temperature. And when you finally scan them, it takes the image and interprets the image using a CNN, a convoluted neural network, to tell you if there is a possibility that was a breakage in the cold chain upstream. So all of these things are, as I said, to do with trust. And above everything else, it enables us to integrate value chains and supply chains, which really is what the AfCFTA is about. Now, what I'm going to try and convince you about is that for a company like ours, we can both enable the AfCFTA, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, as well as be enabled by it. And what do I mean by that? Let's go back to this origin discussion that I was having a moment ago. You are a Tanzanian farmer, you grow maize, you want to sell it in Kenya. It's required that you use a certain type of weedicide, or pesticide, a certain type of fertilizer. All of these are regulated because if you use the wrong type, you can have residue in the crop that actually hurt human beings. So you have government regulators that are supposed to go around farms, making sure the right thing are being done. And then on top of that, if you as the farmer want to buy seeds, you need to be able to buy seeds that will germinate properly. Because otherwise, when your harvest comes, you find out that you got 10% of the expected yield and you are bankrupt. So you want to make sure the seeds that you are using, you're planting, is the proper seed. Now, assuming you wanted to buy seed made in, grown in Kenya, how do you tell that, all these things that I talked about in terms of validation of assurances and the like of it have taken place properly and the regulator have done their work? You have very little way of knowing. AfCFTA will enhance trade, but that will only work properly if I know for sure that what I'm getting across the border is of the requisite quality. And given national sovereignty issues, I need to be assured that the regulator in the other country is doing their work well. In the area of anti-dumping, it becomes even clearer. So for instance, a free trade agreement is based on the notion that only the countries within that area, that free trade area, are trading among themselves without tariffs. Now, if I can bring goods from China into Tanzania and then ship them into Kenya without the Kenyans knowing where the products have been, in more or less, I'm cheating the Kenyan producer because I'm taking advantage of Chinese costs to compete within the free trade area. So it's important that for a free trade area to be successful, origin determination is sound. Know where things are coming from, and we have good information about the quality of those items that are coming to our country. This is an obvious no-brainer. Now, our technology enables that kind of thing. But what is more interesting beyond what our technology can do to help AfCFTA and what we've learned in terms of how we can work with AfCFTA is how AfCFTA itself enables the work that we do. I talked about the issue around me being running a nano multinational. And one of the key things that I discovered was, even though I'm an African and I run an African enterprise and often I'll even incorporate locally, very often nationality will mean that I'm not eligible for local content. So I'll be operating in telecom VAS in Tanzania, and I'll be told that, well, for this, you need to have this percentage of local ownership, and being African doesn't really matter in that regard. You are treated just as you would if you were a German or a Korean or a Lebanese. And that's quite painful because very often as an African, I'm struggling with the same challenges that a Tanzanian entrepreneur is struggling from. Whereas a German entrepreneur coming in often benefits from really improved terms of trade in their own country, which I don't get. So with the Continental Free Trade Agreement coming in and having done most of the work for goods and now moving into services, what will happen is that we have something called cumulation, which means that if I do work in another African country, I can benefit from that work that I've done in that other African country from a local content point of view in the third African country. We call it diagonal accumulation. So I could have my developer sit in Nigeria, build some algorithm, put it in the product that is selling in Tanzania. And then if I'm competing for some work or for some tender in South Africa that requires local content, I can accumulate all the work that I did in the other African countries and use that as evidence that I meet the local content regulations in South Africa. This could be extremely powerful. And what I want to urge you all is to study this seemingly technical area, but actually, to my mind, the very core and pillar of AfCFTA rests on this notion of accumulation of local content, where even if you sit in Zambia, you can go and do work in Morocco and be treated as a local entrepreneur with all the benefits that will accrue. Thank you very much. And if there are any questions, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bright, for that great session and to get everyone started. And I think what I would love to do is just see if our moderator, Andrews, is currently online. But I am aware that you are tight with time in terms of being able to take any questions from everyone today. But I think what I will take on myself is to just truly acknowledge helping us set the tone. And I'm very excited for the conversation that's going to carry on today after this has been done. So with that, we will happily, as someone said, clap, clap, clap for you, virtually everywhere that you are, and move with the program for today's session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, Vuyo. My regards to everyone.
Absolutely, and thank you for getting us off on the great tone today. So we seem to be having some technical difficulties with a few of our speakers and panelists today, but I understand Andrews is currently online and ready to get us moving with our session today. Andrews, are you there?
I am. I'm here with you. So that was a very insightful keynote from Bright. We really appreciate that depth of knowledge shared with us. I'm looking forward to have a very exciting panel discussion hovering around the thoughts shared by Bright, trying to get the integration of AfCFTA by seeing how his business performs and how he cuts across his traceability, trust issues, and trying to get his product to validate every other business, being more or less like the game changer within the value chain of other businesses through the whole journey of entering into another business. So that's a very insightful thought. I'm looking forward to get more insights and more thoughts from our panel. I'm very happy to welcome Yavi, Ike, Chibuna, Intiki, and then Francisca. They're going to share with us how their journey has been, and then how the AfCFTA conversation also plays a major role in their businesses as entrepreneurs. So if you're here with me, our panelists, maybe you can turn on your video so that we can all see you. And we are proud to be, Shared Value is proud to be co-hosting this webinar at the 3rd edition of the African Entrepreneurship Forum with PACCI, the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And we are happy to have Mr. Gena, the Executive Director of PACCI, here with us. We are so happy to have you, sir. Okay, so if our panel can hear me, let's start with Yavi. How's your journey been? And can you tell us what you do with the young, I think the Africa Women business?
It's okay.
Thank you so much.
I'll get it.
I'm trying to connect
with
my laptop since I had a bit of power issues. But I'm happy to have you here with us. Please share with us how you.
Thank you, Andrews. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tiki. Thank you, Vuyo. Thank you, SVAI. This is such an important conversation. And I'm looking forward to the deep discussion and the narrative that hopefully emerges from today. So this morning, I'm joining you from South Africa. I'm South African born, which is the headquarters for the Pan-African Business Women's Association, PABWA, but it is Pan-African. So I look at the AfCFTA from various perspectives. I'm a serial entrepreneur as much as I'm an activist. So when it comes to the AfCFTA, there is an organization that has been co-founded or founded by me called I Am South African, and under that is AfCFTA South Africa, which is an entity that deals with the AfCFTA from a South African perspective. There's a global consulting, Continental Consulting Group, which is a Pan-African organization, and I have co-founded it with a couple of experts, government advisors from the AfCFTA world specifically, as well as Partner with Africa, which looks at advisory and partnering African businesses with the diaspora. Referring to Bright's presentation around the origin aspect, that has become critical in how we partner with other global companies. And then finally, I'm the executive director and founder of the Pan-African Business Women's Association, which is PABWA, which is a gender equality organization focused specifically on women's economic autonomy, with a laser focus on the AfCFTA as a leverageable tool to drive financial inclusion for women and youth. And the reason why youth is our additional priority over and above being a women's organization and think tank is that we have the most number of single mothers in the world. Sub-Saharan Africa has 40% of the world's single mothers, and therefore the youth become the next generation of inheriting non-financial inclusion and non-economic autonomy. So the youth become very, very critical to us as an organization. So in a lot, that is me, and I'm very grateful to be here today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that in-depth introduction. I could just say that you're a woman who wears many hats, and we are so happy to have you here with us. Amazing, amazing. So Patrick, can you also do us the honor? Tell us about your journey, your work as a business advisor and an investor. Hello, can you hear me, Patrick?
It's a pleasure and an honor to be part of the panel. So my journey is I've been a Pan-African since I was a baby. I was very fortunate to be born in a family that traveled the continent, and I took it upon myself to replicate that. So my background is in the law, and I've been a commercial and corporate lawyer now for over 10 years, and I've had the good fortune of working across the continent and speaking a few languages from this beautiful continent of ours. It's really helped. And what I've done is taken that experience to really assist small and medium size entrepreneurs and businesses connect to the African market, really. Partnerships, distribution agreements, but then, yeah, and of course, once the structures are set up, the growth aspect comes in with investments. So I've been very fortunate to the experience that I've had, and to now be contributing, of course, with members of the panel and all of us here towards the sustainable growth of this continent. That's what I'm passionate about. And I look forward to discussing the topic, but also with all of you here, so that we can grow and build this beautiful place. That's me.
Amazing, 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 amazing. We look forward to hearing you speak more on the topic and to build this beautiful place, as you said. Amazing. Insiki, I'll be happy to know, and for the panel, I mean, for everyone joining the call today, I'm sure everybody would love to know your journey also, and how is it being a winemaker? And I've seen you on CNN before, actually. I was quite young at the time, but I'm so happy to have you here on the call with us. So honored.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you very much for having me in this. It's such an honor to be part of this discussion. My name is Nsiki Biela, and the winemaker and owner of Aslina Wines. I think I've been in the industry now since, I'm not sure if I should include the university time, but it was part of the struggle of that, being in a male and white dominated environment, but having to paddle through that and having a vision to say at some point, I do want to start my own company. So I worked when I finished my studies, I worked for one of the small companies in Stellenbosch. I worked for them for 13 years, but the aim for that was to actually learn and collect as much information, as much knowledge as possible for me to be able to run, to start a company. So I also did that by traveling and getting to know how other countries are making their wines. How are they marketing it? What is the key things that they do that make their businesses a success? And trying to learn the do's and don'ts. And I think one of the, which I was very happy to be part of this, I think one of the most difficult places I found was trying to travel within our continent. That was one place where I found it so difficult. Like just to get a visa, just to go, it was, and I was like, I'm fine, it's much easier to get a visa to go to America or get a visa to go to Europe, but in my own continent, I'm struggling. So that was kind of, it was making, it opened my eyes to the difficulties that we have and to realize that other people from outside our continent are finding it easy to come in and do stuff, but we're finding it difficult to move within our own space. So, but with that, as I think that was 2015 when I resigned at my job, and then I decided to start Aslina, which is a company named after my grandmother. So we've been running now since then. We started with 1,800 bottles, and this year we just produced 100,000 bottles. We are exporting to the US, to Germany, we are in Japan, we are in Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and Botswana, Swaziland, which I was really happy to say, actually, that was easy to get to some of our neighboring countries while I'm trying to get to other countries within the continent. And we are in Ghana and a little bit in Zimbabwe. And so it's basically the majority though is the US, Japan, and Europe. But we are growing in our continent. And also I'm one of the directors for the Punitash Youth Development Academy. So there we are training young people through the value chain of the wine industry. Again, looking at the wine industry being male and white dominated. So trying to bring young people of color into the industry, because as they are around the industry, they look at the wine industry as, I don't belong there. So just to say, actually, you can do something, you can get in. It's not going to be easy, but you can find ways of making this work. So we do that, and then we do job placements, and they work within the industry, and some they even go outside, and some are in the cruise ship now working there. So they just a little bit of a snippet of what I do.
Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. Thanks a lot for sharing that. And we look forward to hearing more from you, getting to also, touch a bit on the difficulty that you faced in penetrating or moving through your own continent, considering that you could travel to and fro other continents. Would love to hear more on that. I'll be touching base very quickly on that. So Chibuna, amazing, my brother. It's good to have you here.
Yeah.
Tell us about your journey and who is Chibuna? What does Chibuna do?
Okay.
I'm sure our audience would love to know.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Andrews. Good morning, everyone. I'm connecting. My name is Chibuna Ogbonna. I'm an entrepreneur from Nigeria. I'm connecting from Hamburg, Germany. I'm hosted by the International Sustainability Academy here in Hamburg for my project. So currently, I just graduated from a university a few months ago. But I started my company while in the university. So I'm like 2 years now in the entrepreneurial journey. So while listening to Tsiki, I was like, wow, I still have a very long way to go. Yeah, so I'm also an activist. I'm also a climate activist. I worked with Student Energy on the Global Youth Energy Outlook, representing our continent, Sub-Saharan Africa, as a regional coordinator last year. And also, I have a strong belief that Africa will need the energy to build into and run a developed continent, and that's why sustainable energy is really important. And if you look at just here in Germany, energy is just, abundant, and it's just there, for businesses, for individuals to run their life. So, and this is something that is really lacking in Africa. People struggle a lot. Businesses have to pay so much to access energy or electricity for running their businesses. And that really sets us back a lot. So that's one thing my company is trying to do, to bridge the gap of energy access, and to see how we can create technologies and create solutions that can help people to access electricity very, very seamlessly to do their business and to live their lives. Yeah, so that's all about me. I joined the Shared Value Africa family back in February with Andrews and other entrepreneurs, and I'm looking forward to having a great conversation on this panel. Thank you very much.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, my brother Chibuna. So we are both on the Shared Value Purpose Playbook training, and the journey has been amazing. You know, the concept of shared value, creating sustainable businesses has actually transformed our life. Personally, we are living testimonies to that. And Chibuna, about the renewable energy, you know, I just faced some power outage just like that. So my friend, I'll be talking further with you. I think we need some serious power energy boosters around our continent so that we all stay afloat. We have consistent, undistracted energy. Thanks a lot for that. Ikechukwu, sir, would love to hear more from you also. How's the journey been for you? Yes. And what does it take to be a serial entrepreneur as yourself?
Okay, thank you. So my name is, like you know, Ikechukwu is my name, and I'm from the Good Drone Company Limited here in Nigeria. We and the idea of setting up the Good Drone Company came because of the challenges we have in logistics in Africa. So when COVID came, and you know, a certain drone company was in Nigeria trying to market their service, but it was actually very expensive. You know, it cost government millions of dollars to do that. So the government reached out to me, say, hey, you're an innovator. Can you find us an affordable solution to be able to deliver vaccines and medicines to, you know, hinterland areas? Of course, you know how massive a country Nigeria is, and we have challenges with our infrastructure, our road infrastructure, our rail infrastructure. Yes, we've always had issues with that because of you know, government priority. You know, we don't have enough funding for that, and of course, even if we have all the money, it would have cost government tens of billions of dollars to build the roads necessary. You know, and it would take years to do that. So when the challenge, I had a meeting with the Commissioner for Health, and I told him, okay, let me see what I can do. So I set up meetings with my partners and contacts. So we came up with a drone idea, but you know, a more for you know, for the millions of dollars that is being asked. So that's how we started the journey, this current journey. We incorporated in April. We're, you know, working hand in hand with the, you know, AfCFTA. You know, I mean, it's just like AfCFTA was developed for us, because we actually started from Nigeria and sent a team down to Uganda and Nairobi. So, from day one, we are an African company, you know. So that's why what Share Value is doing, and the AfCFTA is of, you know, great benefit to us. I think we are very happy for, you know, the AfCFTA, and even though Nigeria took a while to sign on, but we're happy to be on board. So for us, it's a win-win. So the idea is to make it possible for us to be able to reach out across
we are losing you a bit. We are losing you a bit. So if in case you can you know, turn off your video, so that we can have amazing. If thank
so
you.
Is it better?
Yeah,
now?
it's better. It's better.
Okay. So
it's better.
So the idea. Okay.
Continue.
Okay. So the idea is to address, you know, the challenges we have in logistics. You know, it costs. Idea is a no-brainer, really, because we have, our skies are very much open in Africa. We don't have so many things flying on the air. We don't have too many private.
Okay, Ikechukwu, we're losing you. But then I'm sure we'll delve more into your work and how we could integrate the AfCFTA moving forward. So I think you actually helped us to, move straight into the conversation, just about thinking through bright submissions. Starting to become themselves economic outputs of the whole export conversation and export diversification around the conversation of AfCFTA. So I just want to know, in the case of, let's say, Yavi, considering your work with a lot of women businesses, consulting on several platforms, what is the real opportunity for AfCFTA, for African businesses and entrepreneurs alike? I want to get an appreciation of the real opportunity. If Bright is saying that SMEs and startups, themselves are becoming significant brands, for the final economic outputs in terms of generating more capacity, in terms of doing more businesses intra-Africa wise, how does the AfCFTA conversation brings us into this place where we can say that there's actually a real opportunity considering AfCFTA?
Thank you, Andrews. On a couple of levels, but I'm just going to kind of mention 2 or 3. Let's see, I don't want to take up too much time and let the other panelists speak. So let's start with digitalization of trade. If we look at digitalization and the connectivity issues, on webinars like this aside, digitalization of trade has so many opportunities. Lockdowns around the world has shown us how much that if we become digitalized in our businesses, how much that can open it up from an intra-Africa perspective. When we look at the rise of e-commerce specifically, we are probably the least, in terms of the continent itself, we're probably the least number, or have the least number of e-commerce stores, sites, however you want to put it. And that means that the potential to be able to grow and drive from an e-commerce perspective is massive. When we look at women, women, obviously from a legality perspective, from a social justice and rights aspect, there are various aspects across the continent. Some women aren't allowed, some parts of Africa, women aren't allowed to own land, women aren't allowed to have bank accounts and these kind of things. So from a gender perspective, as much as there are challenges, there are these opportunities that arise due to digital. I'll give you one example. With the issues of literacy, we currently find that at borders, from a cross-border trade perspective, and especially from an informal economy aspect, women are sexually harassed, sex for favors. In terms of filling out documentation just because they're illiterate, you add digital or tech concepts to that, like AI and voice activation in terms of form filling and those kind of things, it takes it to another level. The second aspect that I will say to you from an immediate opportunities perspective is servicification of trade. When we look at services, trade has always been focused on goods, FMCG and products. There are massive opportunities in terms of the services aspect. I mean, I just gave you examples in my introduction around consulting, training, advisory, brokerage. Bright spoke about technology, but those are also services in terms of Made in Africa and the Made in Africa protocol that is currently underway at the AfCFTA. So the servicification and digitalization, I mean, there's many more opportunities, but in terms of me just answering your question quickly, and focusing on 2 very, very critical and very, very important ones is the servicification side of trade, as well as the digitalization of trade.
Amazing, amazing. The service and the digitalization of trade. Just about to think through on that. I know definitely when I go to Patrick will have a lot to share about the other side of the opportunities. But then let me go to Ntiki. On the topic of e-commerce, on your side of us being a winemaker, when it comes to e-commerce, getting your products on certain platforms.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm glad actually Yavi touched on this digitalization. As I think what we do as entrepreneurs, as small businesses, is we struggle to get ourselves to a certain level of technology or being in e-commerce and all that, because we're starting small, we're busy putting little things there and there. And I can say that I think COVID came, and as bad as it was also an opportunity, because for us, it pushed us to find ourselves in the platforms of actually saying, okay, now we need to make sure that our connection is fine. We need to make sure that our online is moving fast. We found ourselves actually, our online shop started operating because of COVID, because we knew that we need to get our clients the product. And so we had to find out what is the easy way, who can put that on, that or practical for us, whom can we link with, work with, so that we get our online operating. So that came up on point, but obviously, even though it's still helping the local market, not actually going international, it's just helping the local market to have access in terms of buying. So we managed to do that. But also one of the things, and which is again, one of the issues I think as a continent we have, the connectivity. This connectivity is a big issue. I do a lot of tasting. I've never known that I could do tasting online. I didn't know that I could actually, I don't have to go to a country and do, so we do food and wine pairing online. And I talk to the clients and we do wine tastings online. People buy the wines wherever they are, and then we go through tastings. So there's been a lot of things that we can do through technology, and getting to a point where we can't say, okay, there's COVID, we can't do anything, we can't move, we can't, but other things had to come up to play to say, okay, fine. If there's this issue, how fast can you change? How swiftly can you change and adapt to the situation to build and continue operating as, not as before, but in a better way?
Hi, everyone. I'm just jumping in here. As Andrews mentioned earlier, having connectivity issues. So we will be doing a bit of a relay for today's conversation. I actually, on that, what you're saying, it also speaks to how, there's we speak a lot about agility and being able to see opportunities, which is what you did through connectivity and technology, and seeing opportunities through that to be able to keep your business going and keep your business running. And I do hope that, we can have the same, kind of, response as AfCFTA continues to roll out, as we get to know it and what it means for us all, over time. And I wanted to just check in then with Patrick as well, if from your perspective in business advisory, and also linking back to what Yavi had said, and if you have any kind of thoughts on what potential opportunities, you think would be presented for entrepreneurs in the space as the AfCFTA continues to go and roll out. I hope Patrick is there with us.
I am.
Yes.
So look, I think that in terms of the legalities of doing business across the continent, which I've had the pleasure and displeasure of dealing with for many years, the core thing, I think, is really going there with your eyes open and being aware of the various factors that are in play. So I can't say that it's a broad thing, because everyone's business is different, right? So I think maybe the key things that I'm seeing are relevant across businesses, across sectors for success, or for success, are really around sort of partnering, I think, with the right people, whether it's distribution and sales partners or regulatory partners. And from there, truly being able to leverage their local knowledge. So, and I don't think that will change the AfCFTA. I do think that in any case, what the AfCFTA is for us as entrepreneurs is an indication of where we should be going in any case, which is expanding, which is looking at opportunities across the continent, and seeing this as a sign that there is political will for greater integration, greater trade. Going into the detail of the laws, I mean, we've mentioned rules of origin, but I mean, of course, Tiki mentioned how freedom of movement is also key. All of these pillars need to come into play. But I think that what the AfCFTA is and should be looked at by entrepreneurs is, okay, this is happening. How do I prepare? How do I position myself? Where do I go? You know, how do I start? Where do I look at? And the CEO of Pedigree, you know, I had very, you know, it's a heartwarming example of how you can go about it. You know, there's no need to necessarily hire the expensive advisors, the Deloitte, whatnot. But I do think that you do need to have that aspect of local knowledge and be connected with wherever it is that you want to go. Even deciding where you want to go is a factor. So let's look at it. 54 of the 5 nation states have signed the agreement. I've signed a treaty. Of those 54, only Eritrea, I think, hasn't signed. And of those 54 that have signed, 38 have ratified. So that gives you a sense that there's still a way to go for this to actually, you know, be widespread. So now that's one aspect. And Wampele Mena said, you know, the Secretariat speaks about it, that this is going to take time, but it's a heartwarming, and it's an important thing that needs to sort of be in every entrepreneur's mind right now. So how do I prepare myself? Where do I go? And what do I? And I think I see the question here. How do you prepare yourself? Well, look, it depends on what problem you solve, and who else has that problem. I think that's the key. And how big of a problem it is in the particular areas or countries that you want to expand into. So, I mean, that's general business planning. That's what's the size of the market there. Then the preparation also goes into understanding the legal system there. You know, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is meant to then be absorbed into local laws, right? So it's a treaty each country needs to then implement in its own, through its own, you know, legal instruments and its own law. But they have the laws in place already, you know, stopping you now from and it's not stopped, you know, the likes of Pedigree and others that I advise to expand. And if you are prepared now, and if you prepare yourself now, you know, you gain that first mover advantage, or at least you position yourself better for when things ease up later. So understanding the markets, understanding the laws and the systems, understanding the personalities and the people, you know, the culture. So these are all really, really key to that. And I'm pretty sure that the CEO of Pedigree would agree with me in saying that having the right partners in play is so key. And I think if we succeed, you know, we need to make this a win-win across borders. It can be a pirate where you go and plant your flag, you know, raid the country for dollars, and then expatriate all your dollars, expatriate all your profits out. You need to look at it as a long-term thing, long-term plan, whereby you are investing in a country, not just for the short term, but for the long term, for the opportunities there. So that's how I view.
I appreciate what you're saying, Patrick, because we don't have all the answers necessarily, but what we have is to keep our eyes open for the opportunities by empowering ourselves with information, looking around us, and actually also even our true purpose as an organization, as an entrepreneur, and then keep learning and keep interacting, keep looking for opportunities for these collaborations, be it for on the distribution side or like regulatory or even just information side, and keeping an eye open for that. And I actually, on that, I wanted to just see if Yavi, you have any thoughts on that, because you know, it's something that, especially in the space you mentioned earlier about women, but also now, you know, looking at young entrepreneurs as well, where, you know, there might not be a lot of resources currently available, but there is information that is out there. And just if they have any thoughts to add to what Patrick had just shared with everyone around the, not the constraints, but the challenges that one might have, and how maybe they could think about preparing and pacing themselves in this process.
Sure. So one of the things, you know, and everyone on this, there's 114 participants at the moment, and I'm sure nobody would disagree with me that we treat information on the continent like currency. We withhold information, we don't share information well. It's not something that we do well, and whether that is from, you know, governments to the private sector to civil society. You know, we found across the continent, and Patrick was talking about the number of signed agreements versus those that have deposited their instruments, and we have a long way to go. Information about the AfCFTA is severely lacking across the continent. There are many organizations like us, like PABWA, but there are many organizations that are trying to correct that. Having said that, it is very important for people to understand first of all the document itself. It's not a lot of pages. Put yourself through it. Go through the document as a small business owner, as a person that is interested in commercializing the benefits of the AfCFTA for yourself. Go through the document. You do not need a legal degree to understand it. That would be the first thing. And it's in various languages, so it's not only in English. And I think the other part of it is that, you know, be part of conversations like this. Shared Value Initiative, Tiki, and you, Vuyo, do a lot in terms of being able to create conferences and networks and allow people to access information. So we've also got to be very proactive. And we've got to be able to give ourselves the opportunity to empower and look for the information that helps us. In terms of pacing yourself, and in conclusion, pacing yourself is very tricky because there are so many things happening within the context of the AfCFTA at the moment. You know, the continent is in phase 2 negotiations, e-commerce, trade protocol, and operationalization is supposed to be on the 1st of January 2022. So there's a lot to be able to undertake before then. One of the first places you could start in terms of checking to see your pace and checking to see if you are, as a business, ready to be able to start the cross-border trade initiatives under the compliance of the AfCFTA is to look at your products. Go to your country, understand from your country whether your product that you produce is on the list of AfCFTA ready products. Look at the compliance, look at what the regulations are, start there and look at that in terms of pacing yourself, because that is going to determine whether you are ready. To be able to close off that gap, there are only 2 countries that are ready to hit the countries that are ready, not necessarily the businesses within those countries that are ready to hit the AfCFTA operationalization, and that is South Africa and Egypt. So it's highly likely there's a lot of work to be done across the continent in terms of being able to pace businesses and get themselves ready for the operationalization.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thanks a lot, Yavi, for that. Information access to information. A lot of people treating information as a currency in Africa. I don't know if in Tiki you have some couple of thoughts to share with that on that.
I wanted just to say, as Yavi had said, knowledge and information. It's embarrassing. I'm one of those actually who didn't know about AfCFTA. I didn't know about it, and I had to go read about them. Like, oh, I remember someone spoke about this, but when someone spoke about it, I didn't really get to detail to say, okay, let me search what it is. What do they do? And I only really searched after really knowing that actually I was going to be part of the panel here, and I was like, let me find out, because these are things I think as small businesses we miss. But again, it's because as small business, we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have, it's like the little time you have, you're like, okay, if I need to do sales, who should I sell? Who should I sell to? What, you know, you're trying to make ends meet every day, running the business. So we don't have that extra arm to go search for information, to actually say, you know what, guys, there's this information, there is this. Even though I know actually with Aslina, we are growing. We now have the person who's doing our admin has been doing all these parts of getting us all the information of things that are coming up, things that are new, to say, guys, let's start looking at this, let's start looking at that. So I think it is important for small businesses, entrepreneurs, to actually understand that as a business person and entrepreneur, sometimes better not get paid to have an extra help, either than, yeah, I know it sounds, but better get a little bit of salary for yourself to just to earn a light living, but get extra help so that you can free yourself on certain things. Because when you're trying to build a business, you are boggling yourself on the things that you shouldn't, instead of actually having that bird's view to say, where are we going with this?
Oh, amazing. Having that bird's eye view all over the thing, that where are we going with it? Chibuna, you have been driving a business that is more or less working with youth. And you yourself, you are an example of such youthful exuberance that we need on the continent, to try and see young people that are taking a challenge, that are trying to do something within their own community, and also, you know, touch another person in another country to also say that, hey, if Chibuna is doing this, I can also do it. In the context of making information accessible to people, the knowledge of AfCFTA, what do you have to say about young people and young entrepreneurs as such, small businesses starting up? Any thought to share on that?
Okay, thank you so much, Andrews. So when I first heard about the AfCFTA, I saw this as a very huge opportunity, because for so long, Africa as a continent, amongst our countries, you know, we've been so disconnected as people. Language barriers, you know, cultural issues, past political, historic issues. So I saw this as a huge opportunity for African countries to come together and say, hey, we have been sleeping for so long. This is now our time to come together as one continent, you know, to work together. And one of the ways to advance any country or any continent is through trade. And trade, you know, facilitates peace and prosperity. Trade brings together people and helps them to communicate. And that will help to lift up a lot of barriers. So the AfCFTA is a huge opportunity. However, one advice I would like to give to African entrepreneurs or young people who are willing to engage with the AfCFTA is to start looking at how to also digitalize their businesses, number one. Secondly, on how to build like diverse teams across the continent, because if as I'm in Nigeria and I have maybe a virtual team in Ghana or a virtual team in South Africa, it will be easier to actually get information about the local content. Just building upon what my fellow panelists have already discussed, it will be easier to get access to information when you have a virtual team, you know, based in other countries. You know, you must not go to South Africa physically in order to do business in South Africa, right? Another thing again is the language barrier in terms of learning new languages, because in Africa we speak about English, we speak French, Portuguese, and some other languages. So if it's possible for young entrepreneurs to start looking at how to improve their language proficiency by learning, you know, like just improving their knowledge in other languages, it will help a lot to facilitate their business transactions. Yes, and also in terms of barriers some barriers I see is in terms of regulation and policies, in terms of how different countries have different regulations. So the AfCFTA can really help entrepreneurs to streamline these regulations and make it common and make it simpler for entrepreneurs. Because even in Nigeria here, business registrations, getting approval, getting loans from the bank, you know, adding co-founders to your business or adding board of directors, there are so many legal processes, that are involved. So if the AfCFTA can help to make these processes easier for entrepreneurs, it will really go a long way, because I feel that entrepreneurs are ready to take action. We are ready to implement the AfCFTA, but one thing that will still keep us back is the policy regulations and any form of political barrier. So entrepreneurs don't want to say, okay, now we are ready to be there, or we're ready to go to the battlefield. And then by the time we get on the battlefield, the political will there will no more be there, the support will no more be there, and we are left, just without any support. So entrepreneurs are ready to act, but we also need the agreement. We also need that trust from the political will, to say that, yes, we are with you on this. And once you are ready to take action, we are there to support you. So that's all I have to say on this.
Great thoughts there. From the more youth perspective and trying to get support from the big man, the government. Young people always come from a place of, they say the millennials, we don't understand the millennials. The millennials are too exuberant. The millennials are this, are that. They're too sophisticated in their approach. From the man who has actually started a drone business, gotten the support of the government, I don't know what you have to share with your experience in trying to get that government acceptance, government approval, and also looking at the AfCFTA being that champion that will scale up your business. How has it been for you trying to enter into the market or trying to get the government's approval? How is the ecosystem like? And let's just connect it to the AfCFTA being that, should I say, that integrator, that enabler for your business. There's more of a futuristic point of view, but then if you can tell us what is happening now as against what you have done, and also looking into the AfCFTA bringing us more opportunities. Ikechukwu, what can you share with that?
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you, Bright. So I see the AfCFTA as a trade accelerator, the idea, for SMEs and small businesses, it's not always easy. For example, we run an innovation hub, and I know the kind of support we provide to startups, and we provide incubation acceleration services. So the AfCFTA is more like an accelerator. So I think it's like Chibuna said, if the implementation, if the various governments can agree, for example, we are dealing with the Civil Aviation Authority in Nigeria. I mean, I have to deal with the Civil Aviation Authority, for example, in Uganda, in Ethiopia, in South Africa. So if we can have like a clearinghouse where if I get if I get a clearance or a license from a regulator in Nigeria, then you can easily domicile in other countries. That would be a very, very powerful move for integration and for the AfCFTA to become operational and become very useful for entrepreneurs and business owners. If you look at it, you have about 54 countries in Africa. So as an African drone company, which means I have to deal with the civil aviation authorities of 54 African countries. I mean, I don't have that kind of bandwidth to do that. So we really need the AfCFTA, the Africa Free Continental Trade Area Secretariat to actually weigh in, with the policymakers and see how they can streamline these things. We will have a clearinghouse, where if as soon as you're in country, you can easily move into other countries. So that's one area I think the government should really help us. Regulation, very important. It's not easy to deal with regulators in Nigeria, for example, and in Africa as a whole. So you really have to have that background. You mentioned that getting government support is not easy at all, and the reason why they easily reached out to me was because of relationships. So we have to understand we have to build relationships with government. Yes, I know that government regulation, somehow they're not friendly, but we really have to build relationships with them. That's the only way to. You can't fight government. It's not possible in Africa. So we have to, the young people have to learn how to become political, sort of, if that's what it will take. We have to learn how to build the necessary relationships so that we'll be able to get because, for example, if you're talking to a regulator, they want to know you. In Africa or in Nigeria, they don't just give you license to operate, for example, a drone company. You don't just pick it, they have to know who you are. You understand? So that dates back to having relationships with the right kind of people, and
wonderful.
It's relationship, really. It's really relationship, and that's how we've been. Because there's this African proverb that says that it takes a village to raise a child. So that tells you that that Africa thrives on relationships. So that's what what I think. We should build relationship across borders and with our governments. Thank you. Fantastic
Relationship. But then the point that you touched on, the clearance place. I realized that Yavi was sitting up a bit. I think that hits you. I don't know if you have any thoughts to share on that. Having that clearance platform, a central platform where we would all try and, more like the AfCFTA, try and get businesses running. So we have a central platform. Is that already within the conversation? Or it's something that we need to think about?
I suppose, right? If we, from a clearance platform perspective, we could be talking about compliance, we could be talking about payment, we could be talking about, from a Made in Africa protocol and the levels in terms of the rules of origin. There's so many different angles to that. Patrick would probably be, be more placed to answer you from a legal perspective in terms of how that would work. Bearing in mind that there would be 55 countries that have to realign their trade processes to a single one. So the timeline from now until when that could happen can have so many things that could go into this process. If you look at it, for example, and I'm going to speak from a gender perspective, when we look at things like women not having access to a bank account. So if a woman doesn't have, or a young woman doesn't have access to a bank account because that particular rule of law doesn't allow it in that particular country, how does that allow from a payments perspective in terms of that kind of clearance or clearing platform? How will that play out from a centralized aspect? So as much as there are AfCFTA obligations, AfCFTA compliance, regulations, et cetera, there are also surrounding factors that are going to prevent some of this from being able to move forward. And I want to take you back just 2 steps, just to consider a couple of other things. We're having a conversation around the AfCFTA. What are the benefits? What are the opportunities? And what are the things that we could look forward to in terms of that operationalization and it going live, right? That is what we need to be doing as Africans, as being able to drive the self-sustainability that is articulated in Agenda 2063. When we look at 2 things, there are 2 aspects that we need to consider before we get to the point of operationalization and that clearance platform, if that becomes the topic of conversation. Colonization, and Wamkele Mene speaks about it very generally, and sometimes he goes into the detail about it. But the fact that we, and Nsiki alluded to it as she started her conversation today, is that we are more, our continent was divided intentionally. So it's easier to go to the UK and come to Ghana or South Africa or wherever else. And that was done intentionally to divide us. So the AfCFTA has a unity agenda that is constructed within it so that from our borders perspective, movement becomes an issue. The second aspect of it is obviously then comes down to, and how we look at it in terms of that clearance and where we centralize things and what we do, is being able to actually, and I'm going to go back to what they're calling the Made in Africa protocol, but actually it's a mindset shift for all of us on the continent. We first have to we first have to perceive African products, it doesn't matter where, as valuable and not European products from a DNA inculcation perspective that European is better because of our history on the continent. So we have to first develop a value system around African products before we even get to certain stages, if I'm making sense. So these are some of the things that we need to take into account when we look at the broader spectrum of, what are the opportunities. Therein lies the opportunities, because these are some of our challenges.
Amazing, fantastic. Highlighting our challenges and also touching base on the opportunities that lies ahead with the AfCFTA. We're actually coming to the final end of our conversation, and I feel like there's more to share. There's a lot more that we can touch base on. However, just by way of conclusion, Patrick, what do you have to say looking into the next decade? What do we have to do as entrepreneurs, as SME businesses, to SMEs and startups alike, to begin to think of how to create resilience in our business operation, and also think how to also carve our value, our product, our services with an African orientation, such that someone in Mozambique, someone in Ethiopia will not feel so detached, because already, as Yavi said, our system, our borders are so created so that we would actually not work with ourselves, but rather trade or work with other people. So in conclusion, what can you touch on? What can you share within this, looking into the next decade? What should we do as businesses?
Andrews, I really appreciate the question. I think that you're highlighting trends that are going to be so key for us in terms of supply chain diversification. We've seen with what happened last year, particularly, I'm referring to COVID, the importance of having regional supply chains. So the AfCFTA is providing us now with this avenue towards something that I think was always going to happen, because not only of that event, but I think because it just made sense to have that supply, and that's one of the actual written aims of the AfCFTA, and it's really around supply chain diversification around the continent, and using that for security of supply, but also job creation. So, well, look, how it will practically happen without freedom of movement of people, or at least difficulty of the freedom of movement of people, as well as the challenges, remains to be seen, but it can be done. And we have entrepreneurs. Tiki has shown some examples of how she's trading, and so has Bright with Pedigree. So that aspect of using this trend towards regional supply chain development is going to be key in the next 10 years. I also see the point that you mentioned, Yavi, around looking at our brand Africa, the brand South Africa, and it's actually, there's actually an entity around that. Yeah. And maybe that's something that should be considered. I don't know under what auspices, whether it's something that is a joint initiative under the AU or through the AU, as the African Continental Free Trade Agreement itself is, and the Secretariat is. But I think that would be key going into the next few years or 10 years for us individually as countries, but also as a continent, to try and create these sort of this branding that highlights the qualities and and sort of overturns that negative sort of sometimes connotation that may come from having from being produced locally. And I remember Yavi, I remember a friend of mine saying that he wore a shirt designed locally, sourced locally, wonderful design. He says, wow, is that from America? So a friend of his said, oh, is that from America? The guy says, no, I made it here. He says, oh, it's not that nice. Can you imagine? So we need to overturn that. You know, we exactly. And I think that the way, I think the way to do that is probably true. I think things like that branding exercise, or, I think that will be it. But as entrepreneurs within that, I think what it means is that we need to look at those things. How do we get, how do we support each other? Instead of looking for help from freelancers in Pakistan, the Philippines, or what else, how can we, empower our own?
Connect power with each other.
Exactly.
To drive the same agenda.
Exactly. And how can we find suppliers within, the area, the region, and the continent? And I think what it means as well for us is, how do we improve our own brands as companies? What do we stand for? And how can that associate that with quality in terms of service delivery, customer experience? So I think these are all opportunities for us to step up our game, individually, regionally, and of course, across the continent. So I think that next 10 years, opportunities to expand, diversify, improve security. That's where it's, of course, improve that brand, improve our own individual brands, and make sure that because in any case, if we don't do that, we're not gonna sell to each other. Nobody's gonna buy from. You're not gonna buy from ourselves. So I think that those are the things we should look forward to for the future.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that elaborated thoughts. Nsiki, from your side, what should we look out for in the next decade as a winemaker who want to probably sell for African and also, maximize your product and touch base with other African countries? What are you looking out for in the next decade? And as a way of maybe encouragement for other SME operators, what do you have to share with us? Yeah, I think you're on mute.
I think Yavi and Patrick have actually touched in this in a deep way. And Yavi, what you said, it literally sent cold waves to me. And actually it worried me, because it's the truth of everything has been done systematically to separate us as a continent, to separate us individually, even within our countries. And that it's looking at having AfCFTA, it's not going to be actually implemented. Okay, well, not everyone's going to have it implemented now. It's still going to be a long way. But in the process, what we need to deal with is to actually try in a way of working with ourselves to change our mindset and understanding everything we have within the continent. Actually, we have everything we need here, but we've systematically been made to understand that actually we don't. That we can't do certain things. So we still need to work with that mindset, reverse all that, change it, and look at things differently to say, how do we, if I see a product that is made locally and understand that this product actually, it is good quality, it is, and also share the information. How do we elevate our standards individually? Not that when we see someone's product and you look at it, you're like, it's not up to standard, let me move, but to say, actually, how can I add value to your growth? How can I add value? How can I advise you to say, actually, I see you've done well, but I think you can elevate here, you can improve here. And so I think there's so many of those things. I can say that since we've been growing as the brand, I started internationally because it was difficult to start with our local market. It's like wines, people will look and then they'll question. But now I had to, as a brand, be recognized internationally. And then people at home, they started saying, oh, wow, actually it is. Oh yeah, it's been on the New York Times. It's been on this, it's been on this. Okay, that means, you know, we don't have this thing of saying, can we validate ourselves first before the world can validate us? But we wait for the world to validate us. And unfortunately, it's something that has been engraved for a long time. And it's going to take a lot of work to work it out of our systems so that we can validate ourselves.
Wow, wow, those are powerful thoughts right there. Powerful, powerful. Chibuna, I don't know if you've also gotten some cold, whether you have goosebumps all over your skin. What do you have to share with us looking forward into the next decade?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just so, you know, encouraged and also inspired by all the words the other panelists have spoken on, especially in terms of working together as one continent, and also having to validate ourselves first before we shouldn't wait for the world to validate us first, you know, before we validate ourselves. And some of the things I would like to add will be that we need to, as a continent, as a people, believe in ourselves, first of all. And again, we need to build not just for, you know, the African market, we need to have the mindset of a global market. We are building for the global market. So that way you're not branding just to sell to Nigeria, to Ghana and all that. You are branding to sell across the world. Having that global mindset while building your company will be a great way to really, you know, capture value in the continent and help us to increase shared value across the continent. Another thing, again, I would like to mention is in terms of education, because according to the AfCFTA, the document I read, it states that Africa will be home to over 2.5 billion people by 2050. That's a lot of people. And in terms of population, the young people will be over 60% of that population. And we need to empower our young people with the right education and the right skills. If not, they will keep running to Europe and to other continents and developing those continents, while our best minds will be in other continents. Rather, we need to create systems that will help to, you know, encourage education on the continent, spreading skills, spreading vocational skills, not just academic knowledge, but also vocational skills, so that tech-related skills, so that we can really outsource to Ghana, to Guinea, to South Africa, without having to outsource to India if you are looking for tech talent. Yeah, and again, in terms of partnerships, we need to collaborate more in terms of partnership amongst ourselves. So entrepreneurs in South Africa collaborating with entrepreneurs in Nigeria and different countries in Africa to see how we can build value. Coming from the perspective of we are building to develop our continent, not just our own countries or our individual businesses, but with the mindset of developing Africa. So that's what I have to add to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chibuna. Thank you so much for that. Yavi, so you're the final one. What's your take for the next decade? In 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes, please.
In 2 minutes. My final take is that we're going to make a concerted effort. I'm accused a lot of being an idealist when I speak about the AfCFTA, and I don't care. No other continent, no other country apologizes for driving a commercialized agenda for their continent or their country's products by African, by South African, by Ghanaian, by Nigerian. So why should we? The second thing is that we need to, it starts with us. We need to make an effort. I think it was Brenda on the chat who said, you need to actually be conscious about buying African. So every day, choose to wear one thing. It doesn't have to be, it's your underwear, your clothes, your hair, you know, your hair jewelry, your earrings, something that is proudly made in Africa. Start there, go from 1 to 2 things, and so we carry on. Buy things that are made in Africa. It doesn't have to be everything, but make an effort. Give good feedback on social media to companies who are selling made in Africa products. These are simple things that we can do to support our fellow brothers and sisters, because that is the only way we are going to go from trade or from aid to trade, because we cannot continue on the aid agenda any longer. We've got to move to trade. So in 10 years, we've got to make a shift and get to that 30% intra-Africa trade. Actually, by 2030, we've got to get to 30% from a dismal 16% that it currently is.
Amazing, amazing. I trust I would get there. I trust I will get that digits, will get those results. I just want to pick on some couple of thoughts that our audience shared via the chat as we are bringing our session to a close. So they're amazing thoughts, amazing feedback, and people are actually getting into this whole understanding that we need to brand Africa and get African businesses to market themselves and to market each other. I think there's the whole purpose of the Shared Value Africa initiative, promoting shared value, connecting the dots together, and leaving those traces that we're actually building businesses for economic value and also for social benefits. Amazing. So Juliet was saying that the AfCFTA platform needs to also intensify the advocacy towards women's involvement in all continental and regional discussions relating to implementation of the AfCFTA. She said she's so curious to know if there is a virtual platform for young African women entrepreneurs in Africa to network and exchange with key stakeholders with information on their initiatives, products, and services away from. Amazing there. I think the Shared Value is pioneering this, and I'm sure we will touch base on that very soon, because we are creating a platform for women entrepreneurs to actually market each other, to connect with each other, and then promote the agenda that they actually carry, making businesses accessible, job creation opportunity accessible for women entrepreneurs in Africa. There are a lot of things that I can read, a lot of wonderful things that I can see here. However, time will not permit us to. Let me call in Mr. Gina, the Executive Director for PACCI, as he brings us the closing remarks from PACCI, our partners. We are so happy to partner with you for this quarter's African Entrepreneurship Forum. It has been insightful. I trust everyone who is commenting on the chat is excited as I am. Great discussion. Mr. Kebo Gina, over to you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Andrew. I want to start by thanking Shared Value for all the work that they've done to make this forum, I believe, exceptional. The event, as we all have seen, showcased the close ties among African entrepreneurs and underlined our shared commitment towards encouraging entrepreneurship and innovation. The topics picked for this meeting, integration, is an important issue that is relevant to the well-being, and it also very much aligns with the AfCFTA. Now, you would agree with me that for dozens and dozens of years, the business success of Africa was a function of ambition, government contracts, and an understanding of the bureaucratic system. Decisions were based on connections rather than the market or competition. Business goals were inward-looking and geared towards the attainment of self-reliance. Now, during these periods, entrepreneurship was subdued, capital was limited, and Africa had very few, so risk-averse, and the individual African looked primarily for employment stability. I believe it's only after the 1990s that African government started liberalizing their economies, thus changing the competitive landscape. Family businesses, which dominated and still dominate the African markets from various corners, But we've seen today, and we've seen it this morning earlier, that companies like Pedigree are beginning to benefit from the free trade models like the AfCFTA with their product and message. Today, businesses in Africa have access to venture and growth capital, provided that their stories, of course, and business models are reasonable. In old years, let's say pre-1990s, abilities such as manufacture and delivery of products to the market were the key success factors, without regard for the customer and other efficiencies. Liberalization also brought in the age of knowledge. Businesses would now grow because whom they knew. In keeping with this idea, small businesses have access to foreign clientele rather easily with the increase of globalization. Indeed, globalization has not only given massive corporations the opportunities to extend their reach and monopolize every market, but it has also given small business access to foreign market who place importance to niche products outside the big factories. Clearly, the African entrepreneurial spirit can only develop and grow if Africa's economy continues to grow on a sustainable basis. And we've talked earlier about the CFTA, and one of the aims of the CFTA is really to increase the market size of Africa. And we've seen and we've heard today that SMEs play a crucial role in the economic development of Africa. They are the heart and soul of the African economy. They comprise no less than 98% of the market. And although they contribute about 28% of the GDP, they employ the largest segment of population. Yes, there is room for small and medium enterprises in Africa to grow, and they can take advantage, as I said, of the AfCFTA. We've seen how small can cover all the world. To realize the potential of the AfCFTA, and some panelists have touched upon it, African countries must actively carry out complementary structural and policy reforms. These reforms should address the supply side constraints and mitigate the short-term fiscal adjustment costs of the trade agreement to set the Continental Trade Integration Project on a successful implementation path for a win-win continental trade integration outcome. Let me finally actually say that it is difficult to dampen the African entrepreneurial spirit. Entrepreneurs have shown their ability to adapt to the changing economic environment and deal positively with the uncertainties in the marketplace. Yes, small companies, small businesses, the natural ground for entrepreneurs in Africa continue to evolve and compete effectively in the world market. But if that success is to be sustained, the economic reforms will also have to continue, as many of you have suggested. Not only continue, but also deepen further. I'll thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gena. Vio, over to you. Thank you so much for that insightful feedback, insightful remarks, summing it all up. The African entrepreneurial spirit that we need to thrive with We've moved through several phases as a continent, and we're still going, we're still moving strong. Rio?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrews. And I think just for me, a final thank you to everyone, from our panelists to our speakers, to, of course, our audience who was so engaged during today's session. We'll be sharing a recording with everyone after today's session, as well as the opportunities that we shared earlier. Go in, register for the entrepreneurship investor readiness workshop. You know, if you've got a climate change idea, link in, you know, put in your application form, and we'll be in touch with all of those who get through to the next round of that. But ultimately for me, it's also to really humbly thank the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Kapogena, and your team for really partnering with us, not just on today's session, but I know we've got much more that we're going to be working on together, and we look forward to having that announcement to make very soon. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day wherever you are, and we look forward to joining you or being with you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you.